Former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Kamala Harris officially accepted their party's presidential and VP nomination this week at the virtual Democratic National Convention. Harris made history as the first woman of color on a major ticket in the United States. Biden would be the oldest president on Inauguration Day. Joining us with analysis of this first virtual convention is Wall Street Journal's columnist Bill McGurn, joined by an old friend of the program, president of the Acton Institute, Father Robert Sirico. Thank you both for being here. I want to start with former First Lady Michelle Obama's impassioned address. It started things on Monday night in a rather dramatic fashion, and it set the tone and message for everything that has come since then. She had this to say about the situation as she sees it in the United States presently.
So if you take one thing from my words tonight, it is this. If you think things cannot possibly get worse, trust me, they can and they will if we don't make a change in this election. If we have any hope of ending this chaos, we have got to vote for Joe Biden like our lives depend on it.
Bill, your reaction, what do you make of that rather bleak picture of the country? The Democrats seem to be playing the doom and gloom card for everything it's worth here.
Right. Look, Michelle Obama is very popular among Democrats, so I think her message resonates with a lot of Democrats. But her message was not unusual at this convention. It fit in with a very dark view of America presented by almost all the speakers. I mean, this was an attack convention on Donald Trump. It combined Joe Biden's biography, you know, he's a nice guy, a family guy, with very little about policy. Policy was decided a while ago in the back room with Bernie Sanders, very progressive agenda, but they didn't really talk about their agenda. They talked about how bad and bleak it is under Donald Trump and how it's going to get worse if he's reelected.
Father, how effective do you think this pitch will be in swing states, particularly Michelle Obama's veiled threat that things can get worse if you don't vote the way she desires?
Well, I think throughout the nation, including in the Midwest where I live, there is a discouragement overall. It has to do with a lot of different things coming together all at once. But this sounded to me, as effective a speaker as she is, it sounded a little too breathless, a little too desperate, and a little too artificial, to my ears at any rate. So I'm not sure how effective this normally effective speaker would be. It's a rehash of what she did at the previous Democratic National Convention, and I think it's seen as that. If they can't come up with more material, then I'm not sure what they're going to do with it.
Yeah. Bill, you referenced this earlier. All the speakers at this convention, they labored to frame Joe Biden this way. Listen.
I know Joe. He is a profoundly decent man, guided by faith.
Joe Biden's faith in God gives him the courage to lead. So we are unleashing the power of women to take our rightful place in our national life by championing a woman's right to choose and defending Roe v. Wade.
Bill, is Joe a decent guy, a man of faith, enough to sell this presidential candidate who's really been hiding out for most of the season?
Well, I don't know, but I think the Democrats are making their best bet. Look, what this is about now, this race, is appealing to the 10 to 20% who are undecided. And a lot of them may be, say, a construction worker in Ohio who voted for Trump the first time, but is having some doubts, maybe because of COVID, whatever, the economy, whatever. And so it's all geared to that. And I don't think those kind of people are going to be appeased by rattling off a progressive agenda, not to mention look at the unrest in the street, the lack of law and order. Yeah. So I think it's probably the smartest thing they can do, just like, keeping Mr. Biden in the basement. I mean, it's been working for them. I don't know whether it's going to be enough. And also, you look at the low ratings for this convention, that probably means that probably means that a lot of these marginal voters, these swing voters, that they want to appeal to, they didn't watch Michelle Obama's speech. They didn't watch Kamala Harris.
No.
So I don't know if it's actually reaching. I mean, you look. The other thing is, I do believe there's a big, strong progressive base in the Democratic Party. It is the future of the Democratic Party, and they can't anger it, and so they seem to have given them all the substance on policy, and then in the presentation, it's going to be, Joe's not threatening. He's a middle-class guy like you.
Father, we repeatedly have heard people throughout this convention invoke Biden's faith. And tonight, Father James Martin is offering a prayer at the convention. The Jesuit has come under fire in the Catholic community for the way he portrays church teaching on homosexuality. And besides Father Martin, Sister Simone Campbell, who rallied nuns behind the Affordable Care Act and its contraceptive mandate. She will also speak at this year's convention. Now, this sister has pushed back on government policy outlawing abortion, okay? The Democratic Party's platform specifically states, and I'll quote, Democrats believe that every woman should be able to access high-quality reproductive health care services, including safe and legal abortion, and promises to restore full funding for Planned Parenthood. Father, what do you make of, first, Father Martin's appearance at the DNC? And is there a concern that his presence and that of the good sister muddies the Church's teaching here on life and voters' responsibilities therein?
Well, I think they wouldn't have been invited if the Democratic leadership didn't think it would muddy the Church's teaching on this. So what they want is the pretense of the faith without its actuality, without its concrete roots, which are undeniably roots committed to the dignity of every human life. It's what animates our social mission in tending to the poor and building institutions that do this. This runs directly contrary to that is this advocacy for abortion. Let's remember that this nun and this priest are representative of a declining number of Catholics. The active Catholics in this country and around the world do not share their agenda. They're more like the presidential nominee, Mr. Biden, than they are like the Catholics who go to Mass. So I don't think it is an appeal to Catholics as such, as much as it is trying to scoop up whatever they can get from the liberal Catholic populace who really don't go to Mass anyway.
Yeah. Does it obscure Biden's abortion record, do you think? And I've already heard Father Martin say his appearance here is equivalent to Cardinal Dolan praying at next week's Republican National Convention. Does that wash?
Well, I would say to Father Martin that it could be, if he'd say the right things, if he wouldn't just play footsie with the Democrats, if he would get up there and be heroic, because you know that Cardinal Dolan has proven himself last round to say exactly what he thought to both sides. And I think Father Martin has an opportunity to do this now. I doubt very much that he will, because I think he's reliable from their perspective.
Bill, would it be better for the Church to refrain from making these appearances at political events altogether, even to pray, because of the implication that they're blessing whatever the agenda of the party might be?
Well, again, I'm sort of with Father. I think it depends on what they say. I'm not really against, our religious leaders blessing delegates and so forth. I mean, that doesn't bother me. What worries me is if they're seen to be approving an agenda that's antithetical. We mentioned, look, Joe Biden is clearly at odds with the Church's teaching on life. He has the most extreme position on abortion possible. Abortion on demand up to the moment of birth, paid for by taxpayers. There's no more extreme version. As Father mentioned, a lot of church-going Catholics, for whom that's a big issue, won't vote for him. My fear is, I'm not sure. I think a lot of those kind of Catholics that might have been Democrats have migrated over to the Republican Party. So I'm not sure that actually cost Joe Biden votes this year among the Catholic community the way it might have in previous years. But I will say one thing very few people are paying attention to. To me, the real threat of the Biden-Harris ticket is not so much that Joe Biden has really put himself outside the traditions of the Catholic Church with his abortion stand. It's their attitude toward religion. Kamala Harris, thought like being in the Knights of Columbus was disqualifying for a judicial nominee. And this administration is going to be stacked with Kamala Harris's from top to bottom in the federal bureaucracy. Joe wants to go back to the old Obamacare, forcing the nuns to pay for the contraception. And we're going to,
which he's on record of saying.
Right. So the real threat, I think, to religion and religious people is, look, I think we've been routed in the culture wars on abortion and on marriage. The question is no longer which is going to prevail. We know the answer to that. The question is whether people of faith are going to be able to live their life in their own homes and their own institutions according to their values. And I think the answer from a Biden-Harris administration is very much going to be no. It's sort of in their platform where they say they're not going to let religious liberty be used for discriminatory reasons. I mean, they have the relationship backwards. The government is supposed to uphold the rights of free exercise for the people. Now, it's not the government tolerating religion. It's supposed to accommodate.
No, but it's curious the way they're trying to message this. So the policy is basically constricting religious liberty, constricting the expression of religion in public and in institutions even. Yet, Joe Biden's always clanking the rosaries around and talking about, oh, I love the nuns, meeting the nuns. Joe Biden in his memoir talks about being as much a cultural Catholic as a theological one, whatever that means. But he's using the faith as a campaign point. His opponent, President Trump, on the other hand, characterized Biden this way. Listen.
He's following the radical left agenda. Take away your guns, destroy your Second Amendment, no religion, no anything, hurt the Bible, hurt God. He's against God, he's against guns, he's against energy, our kind of energy.
Bill, is that a fair assessment? Is that a way to frame it?
Well, I think it was inartfully done, but I think that the president has a point. That's the point I make in terms of a Biden-Harris administration. Look, we see all these uses of government. The government in New York City that was going after Orthodox Jewish shops who insisted on modesty of dress in there and about their circumcision practices, right? The government that booted in various states, booted Catholic adoption agencies out of the business, right? The government that took away a contract for trafficking, to people healing women who have been trafficking, and the Catholic organization had been voted the most effective, but because of its stances on other issues like abortion, was kicked out. And I think that is the real threat that are, especially at an institutional level. And we see it in the COVID crisis with all these Democratic governors saying, well, we can open a casino, but we can't open churches. And I think
we're going to talk about that later in the hour.
Threat.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, speaking of faith, go ahead, Bill, very quickly, because I got to get Father in here.
That's a hidden faith. I mean, again, maybe Donald Trump didn't put it very artfully, but remember, this is a party that booed God at a recent Democratic convention.
That's true.
They were lucky this time that they were able to control all the optics and so forth, and they didn't have any of that. But it booed God and booed Jerusalem a couple of years ago.
Father, you wanted to add something.
Well, I guess the point is that believers, traditional believers, have to prepare themselves for this onslaught. And I think we have to do that by creating very independent, vibrant, culturally sound associations and institutions without government assistance, without government control, to resist this onslaught. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. And speaking of faith, Father, the DNC convention featured a discussion by what they called faith leaders. They called it an interfaith council. This was outside of prime time on Monday. Now, one of the leaders was an atheist. The other was an imam who decried immigration policy, saying that undocumented immigrants are not deemed human enough to receive stimulus checks, while a woman, who was some variety of religious leader, she claimed that she was pro-choice and, quote, Christ did not die for white evangelicals. Now, Father, how do Americans of faith, whom Democrats are obviously trying to woo around the edges of this convention, how do you think they're receiving the mixed messaging here? Or are they receiving it at all?
I lost you on part of that. I think I have the culture. I think I know the basic stench in the room, that what they want is your vote. They are putting up people who have long ago abandoned any notion of God, of repentance, of tradition, of history, and are putting up activists. They've kind of cloaked religion in a political cocoon so that it represents what's most important to them is power.
Yeah. It's sad. It's sad using it that way, no matter the party. Also, during these caucus meetings, various leaders were shown reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, omitting a certain phrase. Watch.
One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bill, how does that play in Middle America? I mean, isn't this a little tone deaf? And aren't you programming against your prime time when they're trying to talk about patriotism and they've got little babies waving flags and things?
Well, again, it catches them in kind of their contradiction. I believe they need the progressives. They can't have progressives stomping out and saying you're not committed enough, because they're counting on a turnout to turn these people out. The real challenge for them is to keep the progressives without alienating, again, the Democrat, the traditional sort of Democrat who went for Trump in 2016. So the question, one of the things I think we have to admit is that the people who are patriotic and who find this offensive and the taking of the knee, I mean, I personally am not sure that this is the majority of the American people anymore. They only have to win 51 plus 1% of the vote, or in the Electoral College, and they might be able to do it. I don't know. I mean, I'm quite surprised at some of these statements and how radical they are, and it doesn't seem to cause a fuss at all among people. The people are not outraged by it.
Let me interject a note of what might be hope here. To go back to what I said earlier, I think there is such an assault on traditionally minded people, both patriotic people and religious people, that they may be more quiet and may be kind of avoiding discussions and avoiding pollsters. But it's very possible, and I think probable, that they will come out when they have this seal of the election, the kind of the privacy of their vote and how they will express themselves in that way. There's still a cleaning up operation that we're going to have to perform in the years ahead.
Yeah, no, I think you're quite right and onto something there. And Bill, the fact that most Americans were watching America's Got Talent rather than any of this proceeding on 3 networks and all the cables tells you a lot. The cable networks, by the way, the ratings, except for CNN and MSNBC, were in the toilet. Everything was down. I mean, and even those networks were not, tens of millions of people. It was a handful of millions of people. On Wednesday night, former President Barack Obama gave his highly anticipated address, opting to deliver remarks before Kamala Harris. He continued with the dire forecast for the country that America must vote as if its life depended on it. He reiterated Joe Biden's decency as the central qualification for president, and then he tore into Trump's record. I want you both to react to this.
For close to 4 years now, he has shown no interest in putting in the work. No interest in finding common ground, no interest in using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends. No interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show that he can use to get the attention he craves. Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't.
Father, I'm going to let you react to that. Obama pauses longer than AOC got to speak at this convention. I guess the tradition of former presidents respecting their successors is out the window. What did you make of the tone of Obama's words here?
Very gloomy. I'm not sure how the gloominess is going to go over. America has always been this upbeat nation, even when we have to fight things that are difficult, there's an optimism that's at the base of it. And it's a very sad reality that America's Got Talent is a far more patriotic display than the Democratic National Convention.
That's a great bite, Father. Bill, I want to get your take on something President Obama said about Joe Biden and the economy. Listen.
They'll rescue the economy, like Joe helped me do after the Great Recession. I asked him to manage the Recovery Act, which jump-started the longest stretch of job growth in history.
Bill, your reaction, then I'll get Father's.
Okay, I have two. One is that this was sort of the slowest post-recession economy that we've had in our history. I don't think anyone thought that we had a booming economy in the Obama years. Second, on that part about Trump not growing in office and this is coming from a man who rammed through Obamacare, I believe, with one Republican vote in the House and none in the Senate, and then told us he's going to run the country by pen and phone rather than try to work with Republicans. So, look, these things happen at conventions. Conventions are not fair fights. You know, you put forth the best spin of your actions and the worst spin to your opponents. I mean, it's partly what makes them fun.
Yeah, that's the game.
But there's not a lot of truth in it.
Father, what was the state of the economy? I mean, things were humming along before the pandemic and George Floyd happened to the culture.
And not even humming along, but really going quite vibrantly. And it took this monumental worldwide crisis not even to stop it, because it's still showing great signs of vitality and just looking for an opportunity to recover. No, I think this momentum is quite incredible. Whatever you think of the president's style or his ineptitude in expressing himself from moment to moment, when you look at the economy, that's just something you can't deny.
Yeah. I've often said Biden's true running mate is COVID-19 because it's allowed him to hide from public scrutiny. It's limited his opponent's public outreach, flattened the economy. Are voters interested, still interested? Yeah, well, are voters more interested, do you think, Bill, in the state of the economy or the pandemic at this point? Where are they focused?
Well, I think they're focused on both because they're so linked. You know, it was interesting for the Democrats, like especially the interviews with the small businessmen who have been hurt by this. I mean, I think there's an estimate of a quarter of small businesses have been wiped out by this. But what they didn't mention, of course, is that a lot of these businesses are wiped out because of restrictions in Democratic states that are keeping them from reopening. So I think a lot of people are interested in this. And this may escape a lot of the press because, you know, we always hear we're in this together. But we're not in it together. I mean, I look at my life. I'm working at home. I'm doing this from home. I can do that. Thanks to my type of job, I can do that. So it's a little bit of a disruption and an inconvenience, but it's not major. But I go out onto my main street and see the guy that had a coffee shop and, you know, he's really struggling to survive. Restaurants that are limited to, 25% capacity. How can they do that? There are a lot of people hurting. But they're generally not in the class of people that are writing the stories or, you know, kind of running the country. And those people, those are, I think, some of the people that each side has to attract that are in play and may make the difference in this election.
Father, as you look out and you see the way COVID is obviously a big factor in this race. We're seeing numbers in Arizona, in Florida, in Texas go down. Those are economies that did not have the full lockdown. Is that the model? And do these other states have to catch up, or are they just going to see grand cities, amazing cities like LA and New York just crumble before their eyes?
Well, I was in New York about a week ago, and it's just very sad to see what's going on in the city that I grew up in. As to what policies we have to follow, I'm not a medical doctor. I wish that people would stop pronouncing on things that they really don't know fully. The evidence that you have from places like Arizona, from places like Sweden, are that this thing can hit herd immunity, that we have to be cautious, we have to be attentive, we can't ignore this, you know, the science and the reality of contagion. close whole things down. Bill is absolutely right. The economy and the whole experience of COVID are interrelated, and there are some things that are as important as the threat to one's health and getting a horrible experience. I know a lot of people who've gone through this who have survived it.
Yeah.
It's a horrible experience. But on the other hand, these kinds of economic situations and the psychological stress, the spiritual stress, the academic stress on people is equally as threatening, equally as fatal. Yes.
Bill, before we move on, and I wish I had both of you for an hour because I've got so much to get to. This makes me think of your alma mater, Notre Dame, which opened up. They vowed early to open up. Now they're seeing cases rise, not hospitalizations, not deaths of student or faculty, but cases, positive cases going up, and now they've gone to virtual learning. There's talk and a push, certainly from some in the liberal media, pushing them to close down. Your thoughts on their decisions and where they should go next, very quickly.
Yeah, look, I was encouraged that they reopened. I think they want to stay open. They obviously have to be planned for when someone is infected and so forth. Look, people keep forgetting that for young people catching the disease, largely this is not a life or death matter for young people. Right. So we'll see. I think they're going to be pressure for them to shut down. I don't think they want to do that after everyone has come back for school and so forth. And I think, look, I'm not inclined to second guess places like this. Purdue is open in, lower down in Indiana by Mitch Daniels, has 33,000 people. I think we should be rooting for them to succeed. My impression is that these are people that are going to look at their greatest risks. They're going to react to different developments. If there's catching things through a party, and I think we should hope that they try and hope that they succeed.
Yeah, and a positive case that's asymptomatic is not a death sentence, And we've got to kind of put this in context, and I think that's all being lost. They think, you've got 300 cases, so you don't have this isn't the Spanish flu.
Right. Well,
it's a different thing for young people.
Right.
Also, Raymond, I think one of the problems is you see this lower down at the school levels, like the public schools. A lot of the teachers' unions don't want to open, and a lot of the ones who decide not to open and not to bring the kids back, they don't want the other schools to succeed because it makes them look bad. So I'm all for these schools that are trying to do it. I don't think it's this choice between opening up and taking no precautions and keeping everyone locked up at home. I think there's an intelligent way to do it. I think these people are serious about the lives and health of their students, and I think they're going to take intelligent steps to mitigate risk and handle this. And I hope I hope they're successful. I'm rooting for them.
Yeah.
I root for
the psychological. Go ahead, Father.
I was going to say, I wonder about the political connection here, too. That is, as long as there is this crisis, then the Democrats have an advantage. As you say, this is the running mate for the candidacy. To the extent that things are mitigated, to the extent that things are reasonable, we react prudently. This doesn't work in their favor. Let me put this, and this is now online. After the election, depending on what happens in the election, is this going to go away or is it going to continue? I just wonder what it's going to look like post-election. Has this thing been ginned up for political purposes?
Yeah. Before we go, and I have to get to this, I'm going to have to restrict 1 minute each because I'm almost out of time. We reported on the arrest of Catholic pro-democracy activist and Hong Kong publisher Jimmy Lai last week. Bill, you wrote an excellent column on Lai in your column. Both you and he have a special relationship. Well, both of you have a special relationship with Mr. Lai. Bill, where is he now? What do you think his fate will be?
Well, I think his fate, if China has anything to say about it, is jail. The incredible thing is, as you know, he's a billionaire. This is a man that could have fled anywhere, and they put handcuffs on this guy publicly to humiliate them, and they've become just such a badge of honor for him because he chose handcuffs and arrest. This guy is willing to surrender everything in his life except his principles, even if that means giving up the life of a billionaire and living in the prison cell of a Chinese dissident. And he has moved from billionaire to dissident. And that's why so many people are rooting for him.
Father, the president spoke out in favor of Jimmy Lai. What does the arrest of both he and his colleagues tell us about the state of the Chinese regime, that they would target someone so high profile?
That they are frightened. They are frightened of the emergence of this man who is the Chinese Solzhenitsyn, who is the Chinese Mandela. He's not just an activist. He's not just a dissident, which he is, of course, but he's a moral leader. This man is grounded in the faith. You know that he was a convert to the Catholic faith. You have his godfather on this program with us right now. And as Bill said, this is a man of integrity who doing what he's doing out of principle. He has a wife who is fully backing him. They know their vocation in this circumstance. Jimmy Lai should be an inspiration to all of us about how to live our faith and how to prioritize it.
Well, God bless him. We'll be praying for him in the days ahead. Thank you both. You can keep up with Bill McGurn's commentary at the Wall Street Journal, at WSJ.com. And you can follow Father Sirico at the Acton Institute. It's acton.org. Thank you.